Well, most of you saw it at the Indiana presser. Kirk Signetti said it's pretty simple. I win. Google it. Well, Google our special guest, Tony Annese. I'll give you just 4 bullet points. In high school, 195 and 41, 2 state championships. Junior college, 30 and 4, 1 national championship. College, 137 and 21, 3 national championships, 24 and 7 overall in the playoffs. I think that's a pretty good definition of a winner. Tony, congrats on the natty. My first question is, how long was it from the final whistle of that championship game to your first recruiting phone call?
Wow, that's a tough question. There were, commits, obviously, high school commits that, probably watched the game and probably texted me, and I can't mention their names or anything of that sort because they're not signees yet. But then there were some transfer kids that we're paying attention to that, are in the portal that, we're trying to come our way. So probably 3 or 4 hours though, because I didn't pay attention to my phone, because I know when I first looked at my phone, I had like 300 text messages. So, and it took a while to catch up to all the text messages that I received.
I'm sure.
Yeah, Coach. So one thing that I thought was kind of interesting about your team this year, game number 1, you guys lose 19-3, became almost an entirely different team by the end of the season. What do you think was the key factor in kind of turning over the stone? I know you guys implemented a new defensive scheme and a few other things, obviously have new players that have to mesh. What was the biggest difference from that first game to that playoff run where it looked like you guys are pretty much untouchable?
Well, the first game, Pittsburgh State looked like a superstar team. I still don't know whether they were or not. They're always a great program. So part of it stemmed, as you assess it, the fact that we didn't play at our best, but we were at Pittsburgh, and it was a great environment, and they were fired up, and we beat them in 22 in that national championship run. We beat them 17-14 in the regional championship game. So they were probably feeling a little bit like, hey, we're going to get a shot at Ferris, and they got a good shot. But our guys kept on growing. I said it that same night when we were coming back from Pittsburgh. I said, I really believe in you guys. We're going to be a really good team. Just, stick with the process. And our guys did that. And I've been on record saying this over and over again, but this is the best practice team I've ever coached. So they just kept on, working it, kept on grinding. Staff kept on, getting after it and fighting. And, I was just kind of watching the Notre Dame Georgia game, and then they popped up the record of Notre Dame at the end, 13-1, and I'm like, dang. I mean, we played 15 games already, and they've only played 14, but so it's a grind in Division II. You gotta roll. There's not a break. It's from week to week to week to week, and so yeah, really proud that we're able to do that.
And
especially with. Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, and one of those guys who I thought was interesting, I was going through some of your guys' game logs, your running back, Cannon Katzer. Game number 1, I don't even think he logged a carry. By the end of the year, he's basically the bell cow back. What happened from that first game to the last, down the stretch with him? I just was amazed at how he really came along at the end.
Yeah, sometimes the game gets away from you a little bit. So, I think it was the third play of the game at Pitt State. We threw a pick. Next possession, we screwed up. Third possession, we fumbled. So, pretty soon you're like, well, I mean, now we're in chase mode, right? And even though we weren't down that much at halftime, we were only down 6-3. You just try to just be more aggressive, and sometimes that is a good way to deal with things, and sometimes it's like a desperate way of dealing with things. And so we just never made a play the whole game. It's just the way it was.
Yeah.
And Cannon, after the game probably was like, geez, I transferred to Ferris to hardly have a yard, but he hung in there, and obviously he was a superstar for us and rushed for over 1,000 yards and just had a great playoff run.
I mean, that's got to be a testament to who he is as a player and a person, right? That he sticks it out and doesn't give up on the season or keeps putting in the work and, trust the process basically, right?
Yeah, it's hard to do sometimes, I mean, young people, the problem, with the portal and NIL now, young people are going to be, bouncing and not really learning how to persevere, and I was just saying this today. I think I said it to my brother Steve, but our two most successful NFL players, Zach Sealer just won the MVP, the Dan Marino MVP for the Miami Dolphins, and Tavier Thomas is with Tampa, and both of those guys were walk-ons. Both of them, particularly Sealer, but Sealer played, almost 3 years at Ferris without even stepping on the field. And so, what makes a guy like Zach Sealer strong-willed and determined and now an all-pro player? Probably learning how to fight. And sadly now with the portal, kids aren't going to learn how to fight because they're going to say out the door, and not learn how to persevere over some challenges.
Yeah, I mean, that adversity is something that all athletes have to go through. Coaches and athletes have to go through at some point, right? You learn a lot about yourself when you go through those things. I wanted to ask you kind of along those lines, and like what Ted was asking you about, how you basically had to start recruiting or continue recruiting right after the championship game with the transfer portal and everything. And we saw Jim Harbaugh. I think he was always destined to get back to the NFL, but, he was obviously very outspoken about the state of college football right now. Nick Saban, since he stepped down, one of the reasons, I'm sure there was many, but one of the reasons that he stepped away was he was just talking about how he didn't like how it's a daily thing now. You have to recruit these kids every day because if, kind of your point, if they don't get the playing time they want, they might be looking to the portal. I saw you say in the interview you did with Tony Paul and I saw some other clips, you talked about how much you love D2, specifically Ferris State, because it gives you, I'm paraphrasing, but it gives you like a high school feel because you have a lot of guys that do come there, stay for 3-4 years. One thing I've said, last year's Michigan team that won the national title, I don't know if we'll see many teams like that again, where there were a lot of players on that Michigan team who had been there 3, 4, 5, even 6 years, through a couple red shirts and stuff like that. It just doesn't seem like we're going to see that in college football that much anymore going forward. Can you give some thoughts maybe on your opinion, or I guess your thoughts on the state of college football when you see Nick Saban stepping away for those reasons and some other coaches giving some opinions on that?
Yeah, and it's just not football. A great coach from Miami University just left. A legendary basketball coach too. So,
right.
So it's tough. It really is tough because knowing some of the insides of what's going on. It's it's tough for even the biggest programs, you mentioned Coach Saban. I mean, I know, he was facing the day before he retired, he is facing 30 kids who are trying to renegotiate their deal.
Right.
And so it's tough, and you got to recruit your own players, and tampering, even though, even though people are like, oh, tampering's illegal. Tampering's going on at the highest level. I've got guys our level that had offers, NIL offers, that weren't even in the portal. So, and I'm not going to mention names, and I'm not going to mention schools, even though I probably should, but I don't want to be controversial, and nobody cares about what I say anyhow. But there are guys on my team, at least 3, but probably more, that had an NIL deal offered to them before. Well, they didn't even get the portal,
wow.
and it was already offered to them through third party,
right.
And that's the avenue now. We're going to have people who are, these third party representatives who really, probably are going to pull out 10, 15% when, even NFL agents make 3%.
Right.
They're going to pull out 10, 15%, and negotiate a deal, behind the scenes and move a kid on without even the kid necessarily wanting to move on. So it's brutal.
You know, it looks like, you know, we're going to have to live with the whole change nowadays. And I can sense the frustration. Obviously, I'm frustrated as an old dog, Tony. You're younger, a lot younger than me, but the discipline, the whole thing of coaching football was all based on sticking with it and getting better. But if you were, let's say, the D2 commissioner, how would you handle the nil? I mean, would you have a salary cap on each school? How would you handle that?
Yeah, there's going to have to be, like with
Right.
Division II. I mean, there's obviously kids getting poached at our level. You know, it's going to happen, but there's going to have to be with the, you know, the group of four and the Power Four. There's going to have to be a salary cap eventually. You know, just talking to people, somebody mentioned the other day, excuse me, like 14 million would be a salary cap number. But then they're going to get revenue sharing money here, and the revenue sharing money soon, and the revenue sharing money can be used for NIL too, and the institutions can use it. And it would be athletic department wide, but you know, football's going to take the lion's share of that too. But to fix it, excuse me, I cough like crazy, but to fix it, I would hope that if we're going to do something like this, then to make all student athletes like employees and pay them an hourly wage. If you know, the problem we have is, you know, we only have 36 scholarships for 140 kids,
Right.
and so I got kids that still are going hungry, you know, trying to survive, you know, being a college student athlete and not having enough money for a meal plan, you know. So what we have and what they have are two different things, you know, and I get it, you know, I understand that for a long time college football players didn't get paid, and you know, there was a lot of TV revenue, and excuse me, universities were getting rich on you know, college athletes, and so I get it, but definitely some regulations have to be put in place.
Yep.
Another, you know, kind of hot button issue right now that I think is just bizarre. I'd be curious what you thought of the ruling is, and you have an interesting perspective having come from JUCO, is that, you know, JUCO, those 2 years that used to count towards your eligibility at the JUCO level, and players would move on to D1 or D2 or wherever, now no longer counts toward their eligibility. Have you felt any of the, you know, repercussions from that? And what is your thought on that ruling? I thought it was kind of weird. And to me, it just seems like we're going to have, you know, 26, 27, 28-year-old college kids, it almost seems like at this point. What do you think of that?
Yeah, first off, that hasn't like the ruling was just for the Vanderbilt quarterback.
Oh, okay.
And then that ruling basically said that just this year, the NCAA came back and said, just this year, anybody who has a year of eligibility, junior college, had a junior college experience, would get one more year of eligibility at the FBS level, which is okay. So it hasn't been sorted out yet for us, but I've got players, you know, junior college guys that are like, well, I mean, if it's FBS, then, you know, then we should have, you know, I should get another year of eligibility too, and in Division II, you know, so it's not all sorted out yet, but there's a million changes every day, so it's hard to keep track of what the rules are from day to day.
Yeah, it makes guys like Jared and I, and Ted too, but I mean, we could have went and played JUCO ball for a couple of years and see if we can develop, you know, after those years at Corona, and then maybe move on to Ferris or something like that.
Yeah, I would say it's a rough chance for the crew, including me now. So.
I wanted to ask you, so you're down in Florida. I don't know if we're telling any secrets that you're down there right now, but you said you went and checked out the Alabama practice and you went to the Alabama-Michigan game. And I wanted to ask you about Michigan, and, you know, we're seeing Ohio State right now kind of barreling through the college football playoff after that loss to Michigan, and they're just blowing everyone out that they're playing. And a lot of the narrative right now is Wink Martindale and Michigan gave teams the blueprint on how to beat Ohio State. Why didn't Tennessee do this? Why didn't Oregon do that in their game the other day? And I just wanted to ask you, as a head coach, obviously scouting always happens. You guys are stealing plays from other teams, maybe some schemes and stuff like that. But is it that simple? I mean, is it that simple as Tennessee should have just done exactly what Wink Martindale did? Oregon should have just done exactly what Michigan did to beat Ohio State? Or is it still like you have to think about the personnel that you have and stick to your scheme? Is it really like that simple? Do what Michigan did?
No, it's not that simple at all.
Right.
And every game is like, it could be a different outcome the next week,
Sure.
So, if Ohio State played Michigan again, who's to say who would win that game? If Oregon plays Ohio State again, who's to say, you win that game? Notre Dame scores 17 points in 35 seconds or something crazy.
Right.
A kick return for a touchdown, obviously Georgia, fumbled the ball and Notre Dame scored a touchdown right before half. So now you're talking about 17 points in this short of time. And if they played again, who knows what's going to happen. So
Right.
It's pretty challenging. I didn't watch the Ohio State Michigan game because we were playing that day.
You were busy.
Yeah, but I watched a little bit of it, afterwards. But the biggest thing is sometimes teams get in your heads.
Yeah.
And I love Michigan and their attitude because they've beaten Ohio State 4 times straight. But I think before that, Ohio State might have beat Michigan I don't know how many times straight.
Right.
But 11 times. My son Anthony says so. But sometimes teams get in your head, and obviously, Michigan's just, played great against Ohio State, and so, I give Michigan credit, they went back to back beating Ohio State and Alabama to end the season. I mean, that's
Not bad.
That's something, right? That's something.
We don't want to keep you all night, Tony. So if you got to bail, let us know. But it's fascinating having this conversation. Let me go back in time, okay? You're talking to 3 Corunna Cavaliers. We have you, a proud Corunna Cavalier, on with us. And we just had the Hall of Fame induction of another class. In the 1966 Corunna Cavaliers were inducted. Your dad, of course, the coach. That was his first undefeated team at Corunna. I think you were a 5-year-old at the time. Do you remember that far back, or when did you start really following Corunna football, as a manager and whatever?
You knew I was 5 in 66, but you said that we won 2 state championships and we won 3 at Muskegon. So
sorry, I thought you had 2.
Come on, Ted.
That's okay. I'm here. Correct me all day.
But there's bits and pieces of what I remember, and obviously you guys, you and your brothers, Ted, remember being around a lot because that's all we did.
Oh,
I mean. I remember going to practices and that kind of stuff. So I remember 68, I think.
Okay.
I was 7. I think that's when my dad won his 100th victory. And so I remember those kind of times. I can't remember specific details.
Right.
Probably my brother Mike could. My brother Phil could for sure, because something's, his brain is he can just keep things in his head all day. But and Steve couldn't remember. He can't remember yesterday. So, yeah, it's obviously a great deal just growing up there, and it's I got 3 kids from Corunna now on my team, and so it's fun to always, reflect. I'm always like, hey, because Wyatt's always warming up down where I am with the quarterbacks. I'm like, Wyatt, how do the Cavaliers do this weekend, and that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
So I keep track of it still. And actually, I always know before I even ask. But it's awesome to watch. And we also go to a camp. We do a camp there every year for coach, and it's just great to be around that program and, be around Corunna. And obviously, my mom just passed, and I was around Corunna a lot, when she was having, health issues, and just being around, just a lot of people. So it's a great place to grow up.
Well, let me piggyback on that real quick. Like I was going to mention your mom, and again, our condolences, obviously, and she was quite a lady. The female influence in the family. We know all about the boys and the testosterone, but your mom had to put up with you guys, and your sister Stephanie had to put up with you. But she's one of your biggest supporters. I know she was down at your national championship game. Just talk about the females in your family.
Yeah, obviously my mom, my brother Mike said to me, I was there almost until she passed, and everybody else stayed, but I had practice the next day, and I'm like, all right, I got to head back, and so I headed back, and like a couple hours later, she passed, and Mike said the last thing she said was Nick. And the second last thing she said was beat Grand Valley. And so that's what my brother Mike said. So, yeah, so my mom just loved being a part of Ferris State football. And obviously my whole career, my dad's whole career, she followed, my nephew, Tony, who played at Central. She followed him a lot, and he was playing there. And she followed all my kids playing the sports they played. And so she just loved being a part of just sports in general. And then, Steph was down in the national championship game. And, it's cool to have her down there and her daughter and, her granddaughter. So the whole crew was down there. And I just think that it was, I think Steph just felt like, mom's passed and, I'm just going to be there for Tony, and that means a lot to me.
Awesome.
I mean, family is a big thing for you. I mean, I think I look at your staff, and you have 2 family members on your staff. I'll start with your son, Steven, who, correct me if I'm wrong, but he kind of took over some of the play calling duties recently. Not sure if it was this year or maybe 2 years ago. One, how hard was it for you to relinquish those duties? I know you probably trust him more than just about anybody in the world, but as somebody who's called plays, I'm pretty sure your entire coaching career, was that tough to hand over the keys? And do you guys still kind of butt heads sometimes over some of the play calls, or what'd you think of his job this year on a national championship team?
Yeah. So I had Steve, who's my oldest, Anthony, who's my youngest, who worked with me, and then Tony, who's my nephew, who worked with me. So I had three relatives. And as far as play calling with Steve, he's brilliant, like way smarter than me. Like, I'm kind of a people person, and I'm just the kind of guy that just, tries to develop relationships, and he's the X and O guy. And he just has so much creativity. Like, like I'm talking, I watch college football games a lot when I'm not coaching, and I'm like, Steve's got a better mind than a lot of these OCs, and it's just the bottom line. I can't believe I've held on to him. Maybe it's because it's my son, and people are like, well, he won't leave his dad, but he's brilliant. And as far as play calling goes, we absolutely share the play calling duties, and so it's a funny thing. People are like, how do you decide who's calling it? I'm like, sometimes like I'll call it, sometimes he'll call it. And I'll always say, because he's up in the box, I'll say, if I make a call, I'm like, is it good? Is it good? Is it good? And you're like, no, it's not good. And then we'll check it, because it's harder for me to see, right? Being on the field.
Yeah.
But we've done that for a long time now. When Steve Kasula was with us in 17 and 18, and he was actually Michigan's interim OC just yesterday. Or I guess that was 2 days ago. But and so he was the OC for me, and like I would call play, he would call play, Steve would call play, and we just share play calling. So we've done that for a long time. When we're in practice, I call all the run plays. Steve calls all the skelly plays, and so we're both used to. We just always want to stay sharp, But I think the touchdown right before half in the national championship game. I think Steve called that, and I called a couple others, but for the most part, we just share it. And there are times, I'm like you, and I'm screaming at him, with profanity. But so because he always knows best after the play. I'm like, dude, speak up if you didn't like that, and that's the worst call ever, and that kind of stuff. Ted, you remember like broadcasting games, and we were at Montrose, and Phil was sitting by you, and all of a sudden you had to hold on to the microphone because he was helping me call plays back then. So yeah, that's the Annese way, I guess.
So that's how Ted kind of broke into the game, huh? He had his mic down to the sidelines, and he was watching the game and also calling plays. That I can see what you did, Ted.
Well, it depended. Some games were in the press box. I was on the sidelines watching a lot of the Montrose games. In fact, Tony, I remember you're the first coach I remember that's down late in a game, and you gave up a touchdown to the other team, so you at least get a chance to possibly tie the game by scoring a touchdown, right?
That was Marysville, Ted, at Marysville at Memorial Stadium. It was in Port Huron. And actually, that was John's idea. And it was a brilliant idea. And John said, hey, Tony, you should score right now. I'm like, or you should let them score right now. I said, that's a good idea, John. The problem was it took us 2 plays to do it because it's such an unusual thing. But
running back or someone gets the ball and the hole just opens and they're like, wait, what am I supposed to just run into?
Right.
It's kind of strange. I wanted to ask, Jared was talking about some of the touchdowns in that national championship game. You guys pulled out some really cool plays. And one of them, one of the guest stars of your team, Brady Rose, won a couple state titles at Mona Shores, and he's just an all around. He's just a heck of a football player. I'm sure you could go on and on and on about him. Players like him, players like the three kids that came from Corona, maybe some guys that might not be getting big time D1 offers, but are just fantastic football players, but are just great athletes, really, really good football players. Is stuff like that, does that keep you wanting to stay? Because people always talk about, why isn't Tony Annese going to D1? Why isn't he going to Central Michigan? Why isn't he getting an opportunity at Michigan State? That conversation, you're probably sick of hearing those conversations. Is it players like a Brady Rose, maybe like a Jaden Eddington from Corona, players like that? That's what you love about Ferris State, because they're going to stay there 3-4 years and you're going to watch them develop for all those years.
Yeah. Brady's going to be in his 5th year here. Right. And so, when you have guys around for a longer stint of time, obviously you're developing relationships and it's more meaningful. Right. And so, I don't know. I don't want to get, negative about it, but if I won a national championship and I had to buy the team and I had a kid here and there that I knew for 6 months or something, I don't know. At the end of the day, everything's more meaningful with significant relationships and, and, whether it be, being in the band or, being in the choir or whatever it is, whatever the association is or connection is, it's way more meaningful to be with people for a long stint. And then, for Brady or for, that class of kids, which is a really good group of, kids, but for them, they won a national championship in 21, they won a national championship in 22, they didn't in 23, and then to come back and win one in 24. How meaningful is it to do it with your brothers, right?
Yep.
And so it's the same thing, just what Corona felt when they went to the state championship game, with Tarek and Wyatt and Jaden, those guys were together forever.
Right.
And then, how much more meaningful is it than it would be if, you just had a bunch of guys that transferred in from multiple schools and put it together for 1 year, Go back to, John's senior year and winning the state championship in basketball. Zielinski and Weber, and those guys, and Moffitt, those guys are, etched in my head. They were 8th grade when I left Corona, but that's etched in my head, knowing, that they were together. I remember going in there, when we were doing the youth basketball clinics and camps and stuff, and going in there and working with Weber and thinking, wow, this kid's a nice kid, and maybe I had an impact,
Right.
So.
I got one final Ferris question for you, Coach. I saw a lot of people with how, you guys basically went untouched through playoffs. It seemed like a lot of people are maybe making the claim this is one of the best, Division II teams ever. Are you willing to make that stand, or where would you rank this team in the upper echelons of D2 teams all time?
You know how good we need to be? We need to be good enough to win that last game. I don't give a crap how we're prepared. I know I'm going to have 3 beautiful big rings. I'm going to Charlotte to the American Football Coaches Association convention here next week, and I'll be getting a big AFCA National Championship trophy that will be displayed prominently in my office.
Nice.
And I'll get to look at that every day. I got 2 of them in there now, and I'm going to have a 3rd. And I'll just think, wow, so cool. But, the other thing is, though, it's obviously, I can't wait. We won it on December 21st, on December 22nd. We had 20 kids flying all over the nation, some to California. Cannon went to Washington. I had some kids that stayed in Texas. I had probably 20 kids fly to Florida,
Right.
And so we did celebrate it hard for about 8 hours after the game. But then the next morning, everybody's tired getting on the plane or flying to different destinations. So I can't wait to get back on January 13th and just see everybody again,
Right.
And that's the hard part about it, because you win a national championship, and every other sport, you're celebrating like crazy when you get back on campus. And with us, the crazy thing is we started football before school started, and we ended football after school ended. So it was a full semester of, I think it was 20 straight weeks. So.
I got one final question for you, Tony. Can you watch a college or NFL game, casually, or do you have to always have your coaching hat on?
Not even close. It's not even fun. It really isn't. It's like I'm sitting over the computer here and I'm looking at Mississippi and Duke playing right now, but it's all an analysis of things. I don't really watch it for pleasure much, but I watch it all the time, but more than not. And the other challenge is I probably should be careful because I don't want to have a Lions fan attack me. But the other thing is I have no allegiance to any team other than Ferris State.
Yeah.
Watching Michigan the other day, I got 2 former assistants that are on Michigan staff, so, obviously Coach Kasula I talk to probably 5 days a week. So, I've got loyalty to him. And so there's loyalty to people, I want the former players that I've coached to win. But like the Lions-Vikings game, I'm just excited to watch the game.
Yeah.
And I know Lions fans are going to be like so nervous, and I'm going to be like, it really doesn't matter much to me, I don't have too many connections with there's 2 GLIAC guys that I know of that are playing with the Lions right now. But other than that, I don't care that much. And I really don't get a chance to watch NFL football until this time of year anyhow, because I'm so busy on Sundays working.
I wanted to ask you kind of a 2-part question. I know we're starting to run along. We appreciate you taking the time.
I can go for another 2 hours, guys.
All right.
Don't tell Ted that. I mean, you're going to keep him up past his bedtime for sure. This is kind of a 2-parter. Kind of.
Boy, that was a shot. I'm telling you.
I have to slip those in every once in a while. You say you can't watch a game without kind of doing a little bit of scouting and taking some notes. So my 2-parter is, speaking of the Lions, Jared always talks about how much he's always loved watching your offense. I think all of us do. We love watching the offense that your teams run. Can you watch the Lions and Ben Johnson as an offensive coordinator and not just be like, wow, I'm going to do that play. I'm going to do that play. I'm going to do that play.
I love some of the stuff he does, but I don't know. Like I wish, I'm always worried about like showing stuff that I don't really need to show. So, that little hook and ladder that he ran the other day, I'm like, this game really doesn't matter. So save that one for the next game, and that kind of stuff. But obviously it worked as a touchdown. But yeah, he's very creative, and I love watching creative people. It's like Steve, my son Steve, is very creative. Even the first play of the game, against Valdosta, Trinidad ran for like 40 yards, and
Right.
we were motioning into an imbalanced set, and he could throw it to the field, or then we pulled, a guard, wrapped it back, and wrapped a slide around. So we had three guys basically leading into the boundary, and so always looking to run creative plays. Obviously, the Brady Rose play that you mentioned, Matt, in which he threw it downfield to Cam Underwood. We're trying to do those kind of things all the time, and I asked the coaching staff before the game, I'm like, hey, what's your favorite play? And Coach Parker said, our O-line coach, he says, the play into the boundary where, we're running jet and Brady throws it. And he goes, that's going to score a touchdown. And it scored a touchdown. So I love it.
It's always good when it pays off like that, right?
Yeah, it's awesome. So just being creative, and even our base offense is creative,
Sure.
and I think we averaged 54 points a game in the playoffs. Four teams that we played in the playoffs with the combined 3 losses they had. So Valdosta was undefeated. Central Oklahoma had 1 loss.
Slippery Rock.
Slippery Rock had 1 loss, and Harding had 1 loss.
Right.
And so, I don't know. I can't do the math on how many wins they had. But, 40, 45 and 3, and we averaged 54 points in that playoff run. So, credit to our offensive staff and credit to our defensive staff too, because you get defensive scores too. We had a defensive score against Slippery Rock and against Valdosta. So.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the second part of that Ben Johnson question, I know you don't want to speak for him, but kind of along the same lines as people always asking you about when you're going to make the jump to D1. And, you've always said how much you love Ferris State and everything. We've already talked about that. But is there something some people just want to be a head coach. That's their goal. They start low, tape coordinator or something like that. They work their way up to offensive coordinator, and then they become a head coach. That's kind of their career path. That's their goal. But is there some people that, maybe just are better as an offensive coordinator? And, again, not speaking for, you don't want to talk for Ben Johnson, but is there maybe something too, like, hey man, stay the offensive coordinator, let Dan Campbell take all the hard questions. And, you just keep running that offense, especially when you have a quarterback like Jared Goff. Like, is there kind of something to that?
Yeah. In the NFL level, I think, I think Ben and I respect him for that, but he just wanted to finish the job. Right.
Right.
And he felt like they should have won it last year. So I think that was his attitude. But at a certain time, I guess a certain amount of money kind of, makes you say, okay, I'll make the jump. But in the college level, I think that's a good question, Matt, because I think that's going to happen more and more. Gus Malzahn just left Central Florida to be an OC. Right. Now, why would he do that? Well, maybe because the OC doesn't have to be, the face of the program with the NIL, with hitting the portal and those kind of things. So there might be a situation where now, like, good, head coaches. Chip Kelly's also one of them, but good former head coaches are like, it's easier to be the OC.
Right.
You make plenty of money, right? What I don't know what they're making, but probably, $2 million. You make plenty of money, and you don't have to deal with, all the pains involved in college football. And I say this about it, I think the head coach is going to have to be more and more a promoter and to a fundraiser, you know what I mean? So you're going to have to figure out who's, now everybody has like a chief of staff or a general manager or whatever, positions they're having, but you're going to have to work with the general manager or the chief of staff, raising money, spending more time raising money, to get somebody like Bryce Underwood. I get it, right? Michigan had to do that.
Yeah.
But so Sharon has to probably spend more time with that than he can with X's and O's than he did when he was an assistant. And, so I guess it's like, what do you value? if you just want to go out and have fun with the guys and coach football, coach a position, maybe people are going to say, hey, I don't want to be the head coach anymore. I mean, maybe that's a better answer. Maybe the people that are younger that feel, the pressure that Coach Saban felt to, try to renegotiate deals and deal with NIL. Maybe they're just going to say, heck with it. I'll go be an OC or a DC and have fun with it, but we'll see what happens.
I got one more for me, just kind of an off the wall question, related to Ferris. I remember when you first started at Ferris, I think it was 13 years ago. I remember looking at your guys' color scheme, your uniforms, and I thought, man, I don't know if they're ever going to win in the fashion department. I know they're going to win on the football field, but I don't know about the uniforms. But now I look at your guys' uniforms now. I mean, you have a different combination, it seems like, for each national championship. You've won alternate uniforms. The helmets are sweet with the matte red. What's gone into the process over these last 13 years? I know Under Armour is a great partner. Outside of maybe Notre Dame, you guys are the number one school, it seems like, for them. What's been the process of getting all these new uniforms? And do you agree you guys have really kind of hit your stride in the fashion department?
Jared, I didn't know you were that big of a fashion guy. I mean,
yeah, he is.
I love a good uniform. You guys have good ones.
We got to work on a better hairstyle for you or something.
Those days are gone with that. That's the reality.
So I was anti that. I was anti all of that, right? I just don't want all these uniforms. But I've got some really good supporters who say, I think I can name them. I mean, I don't think there's any issues. So the Carmodys, Brian and Jeff Carmody in particular, they have over 100 Buffalo Wild Wing restaurants and throughout the nation, and so they're like, all right, why don't we buy black uniforms? And I'm like, all right, let's, you want to buy black uniforms? Let's buy black uniforms. And so then we got the yellow uniforms this year. So now we've got gray, black, yellow, red, and white. So if you multiply and in pants, so 5 times 5, and mixing those, you can have 25 different combinations. So I wasn't big into it, but now I guess I'm like you, Jared. Now I'm the doctor of style. So and our kids love it, so it's pretty cool. But my players choose. They choose what we wear.
Oh, cool.
I have a leadership team, and I'm like, hey, what are you guys wearing this week? So they chose the white on white.
Oh, sure.
In the national championship game. So
very nice. I like the grays myself, but that's
you do.
I do, yeah. Hey, I got one final question for you, Tony, before we let you go. We haven't even talked that much about it. Our guys from Corunna, how'd they do this year?
They did great. They're going to be super players for us. Very athletic, hardworking kids, and when you're a true freshman, I mean, you come in and literally maybe within 7 to 10 days, you're all of a sudden like on scout team, right?
Right.
So you don't have an opportunity really to learn our system much. So, it takes time, but those guys on scout team were like really good. And, I don't know how many times, the defensive back coaches would say, oh my gosh, Terry, we can't cover him, and da. And Wyatt had to play the scout team quarterback a lot. And then Jaden was down with us playing linebacker a lot. I'm with the offense. So he was a scout team linebacker. But all 3 of them are super young men, and they really have a lot of potential. I think, I think they're just going to have a great career at Ferris.
Well, I want to just piggybacking off of that, and then we'll try and get you out of here. I am curious, what do you think is the biggest thing when you have kids come? I mean, I think all 3 of those, I'm pretty sure, played 3 years of varsity football, and probably were the starters every year on whatever team they played on all through middle school, high school. They were stars, in every sport that they played, track and field, state championships, all that kind of stuff. Do you think that's the biggest thing that you see kids struggle with? Not just maybe moving away from home, learning a new scheme. It's you were the superstar, and now, boom, you're a scout team player who might not even dress.
Yeah.
Is that the biggest struggle?
Yeah, no, it's really hard. It's just the challenge, like Brady Rose didn't dress as a true freshman. Trinidad Chambliss who just was, third in basically the D2 Heisman award. He didn't dress as a freshman, true freshman or a redshirt freshman. So he didn't play for 2 straight years. And so being patient and having, the long-term vision to, know what it takes. It's hard, man. It's really hard.
Yeah.
We have, we have a great true freshman class, and you saw 0 of them this year on the field. For the most part, they can play 3 games and still hold their eligibility. So, and funny thing, we held Tarek out for he played in the first, one of the first blowout games.
Right.
And then we held him out, and then he played in our first 2 playoff games.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, because he brought value to just being on the kickoff,
Right.
and being a special team. So that says a lot about him, right? But with our level, the longer you can keep a guy, as a freshman, the better off you are. And the bottom line is most degree programs now are taking 5 years. So, we want all of our guys to graduate. And, so oftentimes it takes 5 years, or some of our guys right now have graduated and are almost finishing their masters by now. So
nice.
So, yeah.
Well, Tony, man, this has been a real pleasure. A lot of fun catching up with you again. Congrats on the national championship. One more trophy to put in your office. I mean, I'll tell you, man, we're all Corunna guys, and we might be a little biased, but we've said it many times that any division, college football, you're right there at the top, man.
I appreciate that, and thanks for having me. And next time I have Mike on, because he's probably the most opinionated guy that you can have. So he's got an opinion on everything.
We'll do that. We'll do that, man. Thanks, Tony.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Tony. Corey Shook and Associates Real Estate Services is the official and exclusive realtor and broker for 3 Point Podcast. Corey and her team have been providing personal, exemplary service in real estate sales since 2004. Corey Shook and Associates Real Estate Services are total professionals helping you sell your current house or buying your dream home. Stop in at 216 West Exchange Street in Owasso. Get info online at CoreyShook.com and follow on Facebook at Corey Shook Realtor for more details. If you are looking for honesty, ambition, and expertise, you're looking for Corey Shook and Associates Real Estate Services.